Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 79, the one, the only, the sexiest ass in DC Comics, Dick Grayson, as selected by Ariel, who is listening live in the Discord. So thank you to Ariel for joining us, as well as anybody else who swings on by our Discord channel to chat with fans and listen as we record live. Our podcast shout out of the week is the Connor Carrick podcast. And I'm not just promoting this because I am a New Jersey Devils fan and he is on the New Jersey Devils. I am saying this because Connor Carrick, who is an NHL defenseman, he does a deep dive into improving mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And each episode, he brings on a different guest, whether it's a teammate or somebody involved in mental health. It's actually very compelling listen. And he's very active on social media. I've been following him for a while. And I like what he promotes because it's not just your typical athlete social media posting of, hey, I'm working out, I'm doing this and that. You really get a feel for who he is as a person. And he is very much about promoting the idea of self-improvement and always wanting to do better and to be better. And again, not just as a hockey player, but as a person. So you can check out his show at connorcarrick.podbean.com. And the other big news we have to announce is that the new swag is finally live as of this morning. It is live in our TeePublic store. And I'm not 100% certain because it hasn't gone live as of the recording yet, but by the time it's released, it will be live. I believe it will be on sale for a couple of days because it's a new design. So you've been hearing us use the phrase "because comics" for basically 2 years now, and we have turned it into a design. So thank you to Emily Walinga, the fabulous and amazingly talented artist, daughter of Kate, who was our good friend over at Ignorance Was Bliss. She did a fantastic job. I love the pop art style on this design. And it comes in two colors. There's a monochrome and there's a blue and red. So you can take your pick. And so you can head on over to teepublic.com and do a search for Capes on the Couch and you find our store and you can now buy swag with our Because Comics design on there, as well as our standard logo, which so many of you have already graciously purchased. So, and we are grateful to each and every single one of you who have bought our t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, mugs, what have you. And also, by the way, for those of you, I know we've got some new patrons and some other folks, Nur Chaudhry, who did the voice of Kamala Khan. I know I promised a lot of people sending them stickers. They have gone out this week. So I apologize for the delays. Obviously, with COVID, it's been a little difficult to get out of the house and head on over to the post office, but I was able to get out of the house and get that out. So your stickers, pins, swag, whatever it is that I promised you in our messages should be arriving at your doorstep shortly. So thank you for your patience and understanding on that. So let's dive into Dick Grayson, the first Robin, a.k.a. Nightwing, a.k.a. one of the many men to wear the Batman cowl. Dick Grayson has a lot of history here. So apologies to Ariel and all the other big Dick Grayson fans. We're obviously not going to be able to cover everything that Dick Grayson has been involved in, but we'll certainly do our best. So Dick Grayson, created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane in Detective Comics number 38, April 1940. So actually, it's very fortuitous that we're doing this because I just looked at the date now and realized that he literally just had his 80th anniversary as a character last month. So we probably should have done this episode last month.
That is so awesome. Happy birthday, Dick.
Happy birthday. And his ass still looks great. And we'll get into that momentarily because it's the second ass reference I've made in this episode. And we're only about 4 minutes in. So Dick Grayson is, for those of you unfamiliar with the story of Robin, I'm going to give you the quick background. Dick Grayson is a trapeze artist whose parents were killed by gangsters. Batman helps him seek revenge against the crime boss responsible. And then Dick trains under Batman to become Robin, the boy wonder, who's created because the powers that be over at the publishing company said Batman needs a teenage sidekick. And we covered that extensively in our Sidekicks episode, but that's the reason why Robin was created. So he later leads the Teen Titans, a group of young teen sidekicks, to other heroes. Fast forward again about 60 or so years post Crisis on Infinite Earths. So now this is 1986-ish. He begins to chafe under the sidekick role and he renames himself Nightwing. And he begins to operate as a solo hero in Bludhaven, which is a neighboring city to Gotham. Gotham City, by the way, canonically in DC Comics is located in New Jersey. Just thought I'd put that out there. Gotham is basically sort of like in the Camden area, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. Doc, you're a little more DC knowledgeable than I. Does that sound about right?
Well, the general area sounds right. I do my best not to even pay attention to it because, random aside, so many people have this theory that Gotham was supposed to be Newark, but because Batman is white after the riots, they had to scratch that idea. That is one of the most ridiculous wives' tales I've heard in a long time, and it's something that I never thought in my life I'd actually bring up on air or say out loud. But the first time I heard that as a kid, I was like, that is really stupid. And I heard the New Jersey thing. I'm like, okay, now it makes more sense. But yeah, that's all false. The Camden, Philly area is what I've always heard.
Anyway, so Nightwing is operating in Bludhaven, which is adjacent to Gotham. And apparently they don't have any heroes. So Dick goes there to cut his teeth on his own. So he first operates as Batman after Bruce leaves Gotham after the Nightfall storyline, and we touched on that in our Bane episode. And once he's working as Batman, Dick begins to appreciate what Bruce goes through on a regular basis. So then he reunites with the Titans, although after 2 teammates die, he disbands the team once again. So after the Battle for the Cowl storyline, he is working once again as Batman with Damian Wayne as the new Robin. And I'm sure we will get to Damian Wayne on his own in an episode. I'm sure one of these days Ariel will request him as she works her way through the Bat family. When the New 52 rolls around, he is still Nightwing. He's just a few years younger than before. And then his identity ends up revealed to the world by the crime syndicate. And he is believed dead after they attach him to a machine connected to his heart rate. And Lex Luthor, of all people, stops his heart, not for nefarious reasons, which is a welcome change of character for Lex. And Lex stops his heart to free him from the machine before reviving him with a shot of adrenaline, because I guess Lex was watching Pulp Fiction, maybe. And that's where he got that idea. So then he's working undercover and he infiltrates the criminal Spiral organization. And this storyline is told in the Grayson book by Tim Seeley and Tom King. And then he briefly returns as Robin to help other members of the Bat family while Bruce is amnesiac because comics. Buy our stuff with the Because Comics logo on it now. You can do that. So in Rebirth, Spiral wipes his identity clean. So he resumes operating as Nightwing and starts a new Titans team. And then he's shot by KG Beast and nearly dies. And now he is suffering from memory loss, and he stops fighting crime for a while until he's attacked by the Court of Owls, specifically his grandfather, who is a Talon, and the fight triggers his memory. So that's some of the more recent storylines involving Dick Grayson. So again, with a character who's been around for 80 years, we're obviously not going to be able to cover every single storyline, but the gist of it is Batman's sidekick becomes his own hero, and also is a bit of a playboy and is really into fitness. So obviously, we're going to do our best to try and encapsulate Dick Grayson in his entirety. But if there's a particular storyline that you're more interested in, feel free to shoot us an email, send us a tweet, join the Discord and message us that way, and let us know if there's something you think we missed with Dick Grayson. But in any case, this being Ariel's selection, and she is a sort of a master of all things DC and is very, very keyed in on character and interpretation of character. Her primary question is, Dick transitioned from an angry teen in the new Teen Titans to a more carefree, relaxed adult in modern comics. Is this a natural development or just a character retcon? So I pose this to you, Doc, both as a psychiatrist and also as, of the two of us, you are much more knowledgeable in DC lore and characters. So I pose this question to you.
Okay, fair enough. The short answer is yes, it certainly can be natural development. I do think that there was some retconning going on, but I'm going to take it from the perspective of how a person can have one set of character traits and they may adapt or change over time. The way Dick was originally written was as the kind of happy-go-lucky, golly gee, I get to be with Batman sort of straight-laced story for obvious reasons. It has to do with the code. It has to do with making sure that you can start with a good story and then change on the fly as needed. But it's very clear.
Holy hitting the ball right on the nose there, Doc.
Thank you for that. And of course, yeah, the campy version of the Batman TV show just really played into that so much. But thankfully, we had people take control of the character and recognize there had to be more to it than that. So we end up with, as is described, the Teen Titan version, which definitely gave it a more mature feel. And I think as we get into the other issues, recognize that a child that sees their parents killed in a horrible quote unquote accident, that's not what happened, but definitely not exactly the best of circumstances. Thankfully, getting connected with a adult that's willing to take the reins full force and show them what needs to be done, all of that, that's not going to be a carefree situation. I don't care who you are. So it's natural to think that someone like Dick, who's going to have the opportunity to be with other heroes in his own leadership role and recognize that he's going to have to be pretty tough. Not exactly going to be the most nice or friendly person in those circumstances. I'm sure that you've heard me say on numerous times that the biggest predictor of future behavior is past behavior. But it is fair to say that as circumstances change and as situations change in a person's life, there may be some ability to influence that. And teenage years and early adult years still give that opportunity. The way I like to describe, and Anthony, you heard me say this before we ever recorded, the way I like to describe the way Dick Grayson ends up being portrayed as he gets older, if anybody knows the show Saved by the Bell, he's like a combination of Zach and AC Slater. He's got the swag and confidence of someone like Zach. He's got the athletic ability of AC, and both of them have obvious popularity. So it was a situation where it's not that he didn't have those other parts of his personality to begin with. It's that there was never an opportunity for them to be shown. When someone has to focus on getting the job done in such a harsh way, especially with what his colleagues on the Teen Titans were dealing with, you don't get to let loose. That opportunity comes when he's able to be on his own a bit. He didn't get to do it as Robin because he's still learning from someone like Bruce. So anyone that has read any Batman comic wouldn't exactly expect someone to, quote, let loose with Bruce. So I don't think it's surprising we didn't get to see that. But that doesn't mean it wasn't there. So it's not much different, and I know we've referenced this before, of someone who goes to college and is on campus and experiences many things for the first time, Anthony.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Of course you don't. So from that standpoint, we can think of people in our lives where you don't see them for years and maybe it's a reunion, maybe it's just online on social media and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? I don't remember that from school or whatever. And it's not necessarily that they had a complete change, because what I think this also points out is that Dick started to learn a little bit that what he was projecting to the world wasn't necessarily what he wanted people to recognize. So there's a little bit of cultivating there too. It's no different than someone saying that they want to be a quote unquote influencer. Even if they're not earning money that way, they want to make sure that they're projecting a certain image on the gram, you know? It's not necessarily that they're trying to be fake or phony about it, but they're more aware of how they can impact what other people think of them. And they may not have had that awareness before. So just something that simple can really make a difference. And that part, I think, is what you were hinting at when you keep mentioning his ass. It's the idea that it's good to get positive feedback. And once you get it, especially if no one's ever said it in that way before, you may start to focus on it. And it can be a positive thing because it can improve your self-esteem, but it can also be a negative in that it can lead to some level of narcissism. But I'm going to give Dick the benefit of the doubt because he still seems to be a very effective hero.
Well, the primary reason that I was bringing up his ass repeatedly was on account of the fact that he has been both written and drawn over the last, say, 10 to 15 years as a sex symbol in DC Comics, and both in universe and out of universe. And I think it's a wonderful thing because for decades, and even still to this day, to some extent, superheroes get written by men, drawn by men, and therefore the female body is not drawn proportionately. Women are drawn to be aesthetically pleasing to men. And it's very rare that the opposite happens, that a male character is written for female gaze and drawn for female gaze. And Dick Grayson breaks that mold. Dick Grayson is very much aware that he's got a gymnast's body. He's athletic. He's in incredible shape. And his ass is one of the most identifiable features about him. There was one panel where he was identified by his ass, even though there was some technological thing that was blocking facial recognition. I believe it's a villain, says, I may not be able to see your face, but I'd know that ass anywhere. That's how famous Dick Grayson's glutes are in universe. To say nothing of the fact that Nightwing has become a sex symbol as a character for women out of universe, that men for decades have had so many female characters to fantasize over, and men are drawn, I guess, naturally or like gods, but there's never been any attention paid to, are women physically attracted to these characters? Largely, I think, for the primary reason that there was consideration that men didn't think that women were reading comics, much less be attracted to the characters they're in. So I think I know I'm sort of derailing a little bit here from the issue, but just the idea that I appreciate that Dick is confident enough in himself to acknowledge that he garners this response from women, again, in universe, but also on a sort of meta fourth wall breaking way out of universe, that he acknowledges that these women appreciate him for his body, not just his body, but that they do appreciate his body. And that for a male character to get that kind of attention is less common in comics than it is for the women. So I'll just, I'll leave it at that. But again, if you wonder why we keep bringing up Dick Grayson's ass, that's why. And you can do a search on the internet. You can go down a Tumblr rabbit hole for many, many sites devoted to his ass and his legs. So moving into the second issue, and I think certainly one of the key things about Dick Grayson as a character for the first, say, 30 some odd years of his history as a character, the shared trauma with Bruce leads to a very interesting mentor-mentee relationship. That's one of the reasons why Bruce sought Dick as his ward to train him as Robin, because much like Dick saw his parents die in front of him as the result of a criminal. And so Bruce latches on to Dick and says, "You're just like me, but younger. I'm going to help make you the better version of me that I couldn't be." And that lasted for, again, decades. And then eventually it got to the point that, okay, let's treat Dick as an adult. But that is I'm not the expert here, so I'll let you handle this, but I think there's a large amount of projection from Bruce onto Dick. So I'll let you sort of work your magic there.
Yeah, you think when it comes to projection, the fact that unlike the original scenario where Bruce knows that his parents are killed and it happens in front of him and that whole iconic scene, with Dick, they know it's Tony Zuko. They know exactly who did it. And therefore, they're able to directly address it. So in that way, Dick can get a little bit of closure in a way that Bruce can't, because I know that there have been updates to the stories so that we know constantly more and more about what originally happened, and it's even gotten to like the almost quantum physics level in terms of why the universe has Batman to begin with, et cetera, et cetera. But from the basic interpersonal standpoint, Bruce never gets that, and Dick kind of starts off that way. So I agree that the fact that they both suffered an incredible loss, it leads to, in my opinion, what Bruce tries to do is he tries to do immediate debriefing, and in a way that you would expect police officers or soldiers to go through, and how, in theory, what some of us were trained to do and think was the right thing to do when someone had experienced a major traumatic event. What do you do in the moment to comfort them? And Bruce's style is clearly one of, you're going to be pulled with me. You're going to follow my lead. I'm going to show you everything, but it's not going to exactly be a kind and gentle format. That could have backfired badly, to be honest, because the more we learn about trauma, the more we learn about handling crises, the idea of just going through every detail in the moment and making sure that everything is covered, it may actually bring on trauma for someone that wouldn't have developed it to begin with, in terms of the stress reactions, the anxiety, the depression, all of it. So in that sense, Bruce dodged a bullet, no pun intended. It could have gone much worse for Dick if he had responded poorly to that type of attitude. But instead, as I hinted at with the previous issue, he does have a certain style that's a bit different from Bruce that I think allows him mentally to adapt much of what Bruce taught him. He definitely learned all the physical skills. He was part of a gymnast or acrobatic family biologically, so it's not surprising that he would pick up on that fairly easily. But also the idea that he would take to discipline, he would take to training, he would take to a routine that for many people would seem unbearable and actually turn it into a blessing, speaks a lot about him. And as you said, Bruce clearly admires that, but I'll admit, I'm not sure Bruce really understands it. And the question then becomes, is it something that Bruce is even trying to understand about Dick? The fact that he's able to keep up with him for his entire childhood and teenage life, and then go out on his own and do the same things that he did when he was right by his side, except in a different city, that speaks volumes. It shouldn't be taken for granted that someone that learns under someone as dedicated as Batman would automatically become someone that Batman could trust. That's not something that we see with Damian. Clearly, things didn't go that great with Jason Todd. So it's not like it's this magic formula that he figured out. Bruce, over time, tries to adapt, but he, in my opinion, doesn't always do a great job. Meanwhile, Dick basically said, look, if you show me everything, I'll adapt myself. And from that standpoint, when you say mentor, mentee, I think it was almost, I almost want to reference Skinner here. It was literal trial and error, where Dick would tell Bruce, yeah, dude, me getting trapped because you put me in danger, it's all good because I'll get out of it, but I don't really appreciate it, but it's okay. I got your back. I know you meant well. And Bruce is just saying, well, you need to do better next time. And yes, I know I am saying that almost too flippantly, but for the sake of time and sake of brevity, I'm trying to say it in a different way. But my point is, it was mentor-mentee in the sense that the person with more experience was definitely still trying to teach the person with less experience. But the fact that the mentee recognized that he had a fallible mentor allowed the relationship to grow more than it would have if he was just a blind follower. So that's my take.
Interesting. Huh. Well, another one of those things that I never would have considered, but for the show. Huh. So the third issue then, moving into some of the more recent iterations, some of the more recent storylines for Dick, is the mental adaptation as a jack of all trades within the Bat family. What I think this refers to is the fact that Dick can be both the leader and the sidekick, that based on whoever he is paired with in the Bat family, he can play multiple roles. And so, Doc, I know you were the one who came up with this. I think that's a fair assessment of what it was that you were getting at, but I'll let you talk a little bit further about that.
Sure. You got it absolutely right. The fact that he, at some points, is an undercover agent. The idea that when Bruce is out of commission, he wants to step up, even if he's not the first choice, he'll gladly fill in any other way he can. Or the times where he is literally Batman, no matter what. I think this is an opportunity to me to speak not just about Dick, but about, in general, when you're expected to be on a team, you would like, and most of us would like, to have a certain role that they can rely on. And especially nowadays, I think we are really starting to appreciate that may be a little too passé. There's going to be situations where we are going to be in unknown territory, and the idea of being placed in circumstances where you're going to have to take a role that is either larger than you ever anticipated or completely different than anything you've ever been trained to do is something that Dick embraces. He does an excellent job, in my opinion, of when he's given the opportunity as an adult to create his own identity. He becomes Nightwing, which is a great name to pick because it's an homage to the person that taught him the most. That's excellent. But he doesn't just stick in Gotham. He goes to a different city. He has no problem doing that. And yet, anytime there's something that's going on within Gotham, he will usually ask, what can I do? And even when he's not asked, when he's just plain old thrown into a situation that he makes it clear he did not want to be in, he doesn't sulk on the sidelines. He actually does whatever it is that may be of some benefit to the people around him. He clearly had no issue with being around peers when he's with the Teen Titans. So it's not just whether or not he is, because I apologize. I'm gonna clarify a part of this. When I say jack of all trades, some people may consider that a slight because that's not the complete phrase, right? It's usually jack of all trades, master of none. And the idea that usually is meant to be expressed with that is if you're doing too many different varied jobs or trying to use different skills, then you will never become the best at any of them. And I think that that's hogwash. I'm not saying that you're going to be perfect in absolutely everything, but we are definitely capable of building upon things that we've already learned. I know I've said this in previous episodes, and I wanted to reiterate it with this one. I think I remember one of my favorite people when it comes to humor and other parts of life, to be honest with you, Scott Adams. He refers to it as the talent stack. The idea that, okay, let's say you're not number one in everything, but if you're in the top 20% in 10 different categories, then you're probably going to have a big impact on life and have a better quality than if you just literally did this one thing extremely well. So I'm looking at it as a positive, but I also want to acknowledge that there's a risk. And I think it should be fairly obvious what that risk is if you're trying to be all things to all people. And so someone like Dick, who does have a certain level of charisma, who is able to relate to many people, which is why I think also he's able to work with so many people, you end up saying yes to too many things and you spread yourself too thin. You just simply don't have the energy or the time to accomplish the things that you want. And people start noticing it. So maybe that's where the jack of all trades part can come in. You don't become a master, not because you can't, but because the limitations of life as a whole gets to you. So I think going forward, as long as Nightwing is considered, I don't want to say automatic A-lister or A+, but even if he is a B or B+ level hero, quote unquote, I wouldn't consider it to be to his detriment. As long as he knows those times where he has to bring his A game.
Well, I know that when you were talking about the whole jack of all trades, master of none, I'm sure that you were wondering, I wonder what Anthony is thinking about all this. I wonder what's going through his head, because I certainly am very much someone who revels in the whole jack of all trades. I do regret not being a master of more, but I enjoy the skills that I do have and what I can bring. And I do think that to some extent, Dick does revel in that, because it allows him to be relevant. It allows him to feel involved, that he's like, no matter what you need, I can help you with that. And to some extent, it's an ego thing, but not in an oppressive way, or not in a harmful way. Some ego is healthy. That's just the facts of the life. That's just facts of life, that some ego is healthy. And so I think for Dick, it's that knowledge that no matter what you need, I can help you with that. If you need me to be the leader, I can be the leader. If you need me to be just a soldier and you're the one coming up with the plan and you need me to just follow your lead, I can do that too. No matter what it is, I got it. You need me to help coordinate with something, I got your back there too. I think that it gives him purpose, and that he does revel in those ideas and the notion that no matter what the situation calls for, he has something that he can contribute. Because I think this goes back to his origin story and the idea of him not being able to do much, if anything, to help save his parents. And so Dick doesn't like feeling helpless. And so he's going to utilize all of his skills, and no matter what, he's going to help you out somehow. He's not sure what, but Dick is not the type who can do nothing. So I think that's where that jack of all trades comes in, because it allows him to stay relevant and allows him to contribute in some small way to the bigger picture, whatever that may be. So, excellent points also. We're going to take a short break, plug a couple of our friends' shows, and we come back, we'll get into treatment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I'm Harrison.
I'm Jordan.
Well, I am Harrison.
I'm Jordan.
All right!
And we're the Grief Rio Podcast. Let us be your unnatural Sherpa guides on this existential plane of mountainous game and movie exploration.
And don't forget about that spookiness that lives within us all, but mainly in you, you spooky bitch.
How dare
I'm offended. We've been voted the best podcast to listen to by many.
By many, that means a few. That's more than one. Results may vary.
We'll see you on the next episode of Grief
Burrito. Yeah!
Yes!
Everyone, no matter how big a geek you are, has movies that they haven't seen that have other geeks saying, "How have you never seen this movie?" Well, we're here to help. At the Now You've Seen It podcast, we help you fill those gaps in your geek cred one movie at a time. Each episode, a guest who is watching the movie for the first time joins our rotating cast of hosts and panelists to discuss the movie and compare seeing it through fresh eyes versus seeing it with eyes filtered through the lens of nostalgia. You can find Now You've Seen It on Facebook at facebook.com/Now You've Seen It, no apostrophe, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Gail Simone, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So starting as we always do with in-universe treatment. Doc, have at it.
So I'm going to take advantage of something that I've noticed is a personality quirk of mine / potential skill. I don't know. That sounds too egotistical. But one thing that I really like to do with certain situations is I like to analyze them as neutral a third party as I possibly can. I know this sounds like, no, duh, Doc, you're a psychiatrist. You're not involved in people's lives directly other than hearing them and giving advice and then also prescribing medication. But I mean beyond that. I do this with just about everything. I do it with sports. I do it with all sorts of different topics just for myself. I'm not saying that I talk to other people about this, but I think that that particular quirk of my personality is something that would be great in universe, because I would love for someone like Dick to have a bug in their ear, to provide audio and video feedback as to what's going on, especially with a lot of these crisis situations, not just the fights themselves, but the interactions with both heroes and villains, and actually give feedback, with permission, of course, to give feedback with how things could have gone better, or maybe some alternative ideas so that things could have improved. Because someone like Dick has always had someone in the moment who also is going through it, giving him critiques. And that's a much different experience than someone who's on the outside looking in. I'd almost like basically take up a position of similar to Oracle, where I'm giving feedback, and I certainly can, do other things in terms of maybe communicating with him in the moment, but more importantly, doing it afterwards and just saying, like, I noticed that you seem to, on your patrols, you are really going hard after the drug dealers, but then you seem to not even pay attention to the fact that, you got these people like passing out in the street, almost getting run over by cars. Can you focus on that a little bit? Not to nag, but just to give basic feedback, because so often I know we focus on these heavy traumas and all of that, and that's fine. I know that there's a time and place for it, but in universe, I know that this goes for the whole Bat family. They're all so incredibly results oriented that focusing on those points will allow for me to back into a discussion of some of the other underlying trauma that might lead to stress, anxiety, depression, all those things. Because I think it's more the ounce of prevention rather than the pound of cure. So that's really what I would be looking for with someone like Mr. Grayson.
So you would want to be the man in the chair?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I guess that's a interesting perspective to take. I mean, you're the professional. It's not how I would have seen your in-universe therapy going, but who might argue with you?
No, that gives a great opportunity. I want to hear it. So what was your thought in terms of what I would do?
Well, it wasn't so much that I had a thing and you didn't do it. It was just, I guess, I wouldn't have put you as the man in the chair sort of deal. I would have focused more on emphasizing his positive traits, and we'll sort of delve into that a little bit in the skit. But trying to draw out some of his more natural charisma, some of the other positive traits that he has, I would have, I guess, thought you would have focused more on that. Not that you're not focusing on that as the man in the chair, certainly. But I guess from my perspective, I would have thought you would have gone there more. But again, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not trying to say you're wrong. It was just more of a, okay, I guess that's where you're going to go with it instead. So,
yeah, I had about 2 or 3 other ideas, and each of them led me to this same point. What you just said actually was one of my considerations, and I realized, as we'll see in the skit, that there's a piece of it that's missing, because someone like that who is very action oriented can only stand to analyze the positives for so long before they start realizing, or I shouldn't say realizing, but coming to the conclusion that this is too much of a love fest. In other words, as much as I'm sure he enjoys adulation, as much as he wants to, strengthen the things that are already strong, especially with his background, his training, and his previous experiences, if you do that too much, the seesaw basically flips way too far. In other words, why are you ignoring my weaknesses? And I've had patients actually even say that, like, why are you dancing around what I need? And so I agree with you. It's just, I wanted to make sure, especially if I have an opportunity in a comic book universe, let me do something that I'm not going to have the opportunity to do otherwise. because there is really no other way to do that in our reality. I cannot go. I don't care what it is. I can't go to a police officer and say, yeah, so let me ride around in your cop car a bit, or let me be on the squawk box and I'll go ahead and I'll give you feedback right then and there.
I mean, you could. I just don't think it would go very well. But
well, yeah, I mean, after I get out of jail, yeah, I mean.
All right, so then out of universe, Dick is someone who I guess has been working under a mentor for some time. They have a traumatic background. How would you describe a real life Dick Grayson, and what would your recommendation to them be?
Yeah, Dick Grayson in a case like this, I mean, my natural inclination would be someone, honestly, like a first responder, firefighter, police officer. That's why I've been dropping that so much in this episode. Someone that clearly knows a system, knows a routine, has been doing a good job with it. But whether it was before they ever joined the organization and it was a personal trauma, or it's something that they've seen some stuff, either way, they want to make sure, first of all, that they remain on their best, I don't want to say best behavior, but they want to be on their A game. They want to make sure that they're still sharp, but also want to be able to emotionally process things. And that is a traditional role of a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, social worker, crisis worker. It's what we do. And the first thing is just to acknowledge and listen. Take the time to hear what it is that they have to say. You do your best to make sure that they are allowed the time to experience the emotion, something that on the job they're usually not allowed to do. In other words, you're not going to typically see a fireman or a police officer crying on the job, or an EMT just screaming out just how angry they are about what the negative outcome was, or anything like that. But sometimes they'll do it right after the shift. Sometimes they'll try and do it alone. And honestly, some of them just don't even know how to acknowledge that those feelings exist. And so this may be the one opportunity where they get to do that. So give them that opportunity. And then from there, you also have to bring the balance to make sure that the person doesn't wallow in it. In other words, sit in it a little while and make sure you feel the emotion. But at the same time, what's the next step? What's the next thing that you have to do? Because you have to make sure that the person has a schedule that's going to work for them. In other words, if it's so devastating that they need to take time off, that's fine. Acknowledge it. But if also the person says, you know what, I can't be at home alone right now, I need to make sure I have people around me, then, if they need to be back on the front lines and you have to make that evaluation, make that call, then you let them do that. It's on a case-by-case basis. Our job is to make sure that it's a situation where they usually, I think I mentioned this in the Mental Health Avengers episode, especially when it comes to physicians, but I'm sure, and the way New Jersey has it structured, it's true for many of our first responders. You know that they're going to respond better to people that actually have some sort of connection with the type of work they do. So you try and make sure that you get someone with that type of training. Once again, quote unquote, jack of all trades. In other words, there are current or former officers who do contact officers that are going through trauma. It's called cop to cop, as an example. So there also are, if a person needs acute care, there are areas that do have facilities and systems that are specific to first responders. Now, obviously, this can apply to other jobs as well, but at least when you think of Dick Grayson outside of a comic universe, that's the type of person I would envision. So that's why I'm focusing on that. And the best part is, that this type of interaction can have such a positive impact on a person's life because, in my experience, first responders are very quick to say either, nah, I don't think that's where we need to go, or, yeah, I think you're hitting it. So from that standpoint, I've had some really rewarding interactions. And I hope that that's true for my colleagues as well. At least for the people that seek treatment. Sometimes there are circumstances where people are doing it because it was required. Let's say an officer was in a firefight and they ended up shooting someone. Then it's mandatory that they get an evaluation. That person, if they're not experiencing any emotional responses to it in a negative way, may not be as receptive to talking about it, but at least they understand why you're having the conversation. So that's really where I think this would go. In previous episodes, I know I've discussed the ideas of specific types of traumas, EMDR, other types of treatments, but I didn't want to harp on that because that's not nearly as vital to say those things as to just say a person that helps others in their worst moments has to know that the same availability is true for their own situation.
Gotcha. Huh. All right. I do remember when we were discussing that in the recent Mental Health Avengers episode, the idea that first responders will respond, no pun intended, better to folks that they feel have shared experience. I think that carries not just for first responders, but I think that's a human thing that we're going to connect better to people if we think that they have a better understanding of what it is that we've been through. I think that's just sort of human nature. So the idea that that would work for someone like Dick, even as a real life corollary, would certainly be appropriate. So we're going to wrap all this up in a bow and see what happens when we get Dick Grayson on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Dick. I'm Dr. Issues.
Hey, Doc.
Why are you doing squats?
Got to keep in shape, you know?
I think it's fair to say that you're in excellent physical condition.
Sharp mind, sharp body. But I can't let up. Whew. Stay ready so I don't have to get ready.
Good advice. Now, what can I do for... Stop with the squats, please.
Sorry, Doc, but I've had too many compliments on my physique to slow down. Superhero influencer over here.
I'm not sure what that means, but...
Exactly.
Huh?
I need to be better in everything.
Well, that's a tall order. Ever heard of SMART goals?
Ever heard of Batman? I mean, I learned to make small and manageable become large and extraordinary in a heartbeat. And you don't get to survive this long without dedicating yourself. You went to medical school. You know that. No, I mean, I need to be world class in multiple areas so no one can catch me off guard. Perhaps you could put me on a turbo EMDR scenario for childhood loss or something.
I'm a little confused. On one hand, you seem enamored with the idea of being admired, but on the other hand, you want some sort of rigorous mental resiliency and speed learning sessions? That's not really my MO.
Look, I'm not trying to rush you, but my schedule is a bit full, especially at night. I can't spend weeks on this stuff. I mean, you have no clue what kind of schemes I keep dealing with on a regular basis. So can you help me or not?
I sense the irritability, but I don't think it's directed at me. In fact, I don't think this session is about me and you. You already mentioned who I think it's about.
Batman, you're really going to do this? Oh no, little Dick Grayson is just like everybody else with Bruce. It must be about Bruce. Can we get over this? He respects me. He trained me. I'm not in some dark corner of a closet pissing my pants whenever I see a circus go by. I'm fine.
I didn't say Bruce.
Oh, you mean me? I'm not Batman. I've had my fill. I don't need that on my plate.
How many nights do you go on patrol?
Every night.
How about Bruce?
Same.
Who has the longest streak?
It's not a competition. Beat me by a week.
What was that?
Nothing. Man, you have to get over this Batman thing. It makes you seem a little obsessed, you know? I have the skills and I can chill. Barking up the wrong tree.
So how do you chill?
Whoa, hey, a little too personal with the ask there, Doc. I'm warm-blooded, but I keep those details private.
So you want to be better than you are, so long as I don't discuss Batman or your personal life. Look, I'm clearly missing something.
Look, there's just more to me than just my past or my sex life. I mean, those are the areas I'm trying to improve. That's what I need your help with.
So you came into the office and immediately started exercising. You fight crime at night. It's literally in your name. When do you sleep? When do you have time to take care of yourself?
Does crime take a night off? Do bad guys take a break? No. Then I don't have that luxury.
I know you don't want me to talk about him, but that sounds like something...
Don't say his name.
Well, you're kind of asking me to fight with one arm tied behind my back. I can't fully diagnose or work on the problem if you won't actually discuss it.
It's not Bruce per se. Bruce is fine. It's not really Batman either. At least not the suit. It's the whole mythos thing, the symbolism and all that. I just want to be able to do the right thing without all the other excess baggage and stuff that goes along with it.
Okay, that sounds like a well-reasoned goal. I know this is blasphemy, but look, there's no law that says you have to do everything perfectly all the time. You actually have a certain charisma that suits you. You're going to burn that out if you don't recharge once in a while.
Thing is, it's difficult, if not impossible, to just undo the last 20-something years of my life. I can't ignore my past, and I don't want to. I just need to find a way to bring the good parts of it, the training, the skills, the charisma, all of that, and put the rest of it to the side. Is any of what I'm saying making any sort of sense?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So do it. Now.
Come again?
Well, that's what these sessions are for. They're not quick fixes. They're not hiding segments of your life. You don't want your time wasted. Neither do I. You've managed to come this far your way, and now you're going to have to delegate to someone like me. You know what? I think I figured something out. I think you're worried that you're going to be something too close to Batman, but you're also worried that you don't want to be considered a second Banana Robin again. I'll admit, that's a tough spot to be in. But you can't pigeonhole yourself that way. You have your own city to protect. You have your own relationships. You're not just going to do whatever I say and have to take orders to get better. Therapy's actually, in this case, a very equally guided partnership.
Well, when you put it like that, it makes sense. I guess I was just afraid that in the process of trying to improve, I'd completely break what didn't need fixing, and then I'd end up worse off than I started.
Full disclosure, I can't promise 100% that won't happen, but I can promise you we'll both do our best to make sure we can catch it before you fall that far. Deal?
Deal. All right, now let me just finish this squat set before I lose the burn.
Seriously?
What? I'm not afraid of resting on my haunches, but I need to make sure these haunches are solid and tight just in case.
Oh, brother.
43, 44, 45. Want to join? I mean, you could use the exercise too,
Hey, I do squats in the... I'm sorry, I'll pass.
Suit yourself. 49, 50. Phew. Thanks, Doc. See you next time. Man, I know they say, don't skip leg day, but does he work on uppers at all?
I'm sure he does. I mean, if you're using things like grappling hooks and stuff like that, you got to have some really great grip and upper body strength.
Yeah, but it just seems like he's focusing on leg, like every day is leg day.
Yeah.
And I'm a hockey player, and believe me, I'm a hockey player and a runner. I get the leg need, but you got to balance it out. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a body like a pyramid.
Well, I mean, he's got a certain image to maintain, I guess.
Yeah, all right. Works for him, I suppose. So that's going to do it for this episode. So our recommended reading this episode is the Grayson series by Seeley and King. So we're going to have links to that in the show notes, and you can go to Amazon and purchase your trade paperbacks. Also, speaking of stuff you can buy, we mentioned at the top of the show, we've got the brand new designs in our TeePublic store. So you can go to teepublic.com/user/capes on the couch. And again, we're going to have links to the design there. Thank you so much again to all of our patrons and everybody who continues to support the show, whether it's by tweeting, whether you're part of our Facebook group, whether you're in our Discord. We love the feedback from the fans. That's what sort of keeps us going as we, are almost 80 episodes in, which is just, again, I look at the numbers sometimes and my mind is blown how far we've come and how much we still have yet to do. And some big names of characters that we haven't yet covered. We just got another suggestion for another character, a big name character. This character has been in movies and TV shows, and we haven't done them, but they'll be coming up soon. But before we get to him or her, guess we'll just have to wait and see. Our next episode's Laura Kinney, X-23. I have, side note, contacted Christopher Yost and Tom Taylor, both of whom I have asked for interviews. So maybe we could get an interview with somebody who has actually written Laura. Fingers crossed we can get one or both of these fine, upstanding gentlemen to talk to us, because it's been a long time since we've done a creator interview. And I think it's high time, especially for a character like Laura Kinney, who is just such a fascinating deep dive. Thank you to Ruby for that fascinating and fantastic selection. And then Superboy Prime, as requested by Matt. So very much looking forward to that. And then Azrael, Jean-Paul Valley. And then we're going to squeeze one of Brian's picks in. I know Brian still has to get back to me with some of his selections, so we may get to one of his picks before we get to Azrael. But I am also very much looking forward to Azrael because he's just a wonderfully interesting character. I'll put it that way. So there's going to be a lot to unpack with Jean-Paul. So as always, you can find us on social media at Capes on the Couch, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Links to Discord server are in our show notes. You can email us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com. And our website is capesonthecouch.live or capesonthecouch.com, whichever you prefer. Doc, any closing puns before we go?
You don't have to be a dick to give yourself some grace, son.
Did you just come up with that, or were you sitting on that for a while?
That was like 3 seconds before you said any puns. Oh my gosh. That is horrible.
That is horrible and hilarious. So you're good. You are good.
Oh my.
And just for that, go do 25 squats right now. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.